Yeah, I'm recording too.
Cool. Welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm really good, Chloe. Thanks for having me.
Whereabouts in the world or the UK are you right now?
So I'm in Manchester, which is where I'm from, and where I still get away with living, which I'm surprised. I'm surprised that I get away with living here still, given that I work in the media. But I've managed it so far, so I love it here. I'm a real sort of family girl and a real home bird, and yeah, I never want to be too far away. So I spend a lot of my time sort of travelling to London for work, but always try and keep this as the grounded, as the home.
Nice, nice. And we were saying just before we started recording, I'm planning a move back to the north where I'm from, and so I was getting some tips from you about different places. So that was good to hear.
I do love
Um,
the north. I mean, a friend of mine who did live here is just buying a house in London. She sent me the price of it, and I honestly, my jaw hit the floor. So that's one benefit for living up here. Like the house that you'd get for the price of what you would get in London is unbelievable.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a big draw for me as well.
Yeah, defo.
Um, I'd love to hear, how things been for you over the last few months with the pandemic. How have you been handling everything?
Yeah, all right. It's been mixed. I think at first it was almost like a bit of a novelty, almost like a weird part of me enjoyed the reset button, enjoyed, having to stay at home. And I think for everyone, it's almost, it sounds awful in a way, but it's almost a bit exciting at first, wasn't it? Like, oh God, this thing's going on. We've all got to stay at home. And I think it was just, yeah, like I said, a bit of a novelty. And then I think when reality hit, we realised what actually was happening and how long it was going to go on for, and how many of our loved ones might be at risk. Then obviously the mood changed, and I've been on a real roller coaster, as I think most people have. In some ways, I think it's been really good for me. It's made me sit and think about what I want out of life, and think about how important it is to prioritize what you want out of life. It's made me pick up a few better habits, like going on walks and really making the effort to keep in touch with people, FaceTiming them if you can't see them face to face, etc. And it's really made me think about work and what work makes me happy. It's made me realize how miserable it makes me traveling around, actually. Sort of being at home has made me realize how much I love being at home, and how much I hate sort of being on trains and staying in travel lodges and things. But it's also taught me that I need to work as well. There's been periods of time where I've had no work, and that's been hard on my mental health, because I've started to panic financially about how I'm going to survive. But also, it's made me realize that I do need a bit of work. I need to be kept busy. Otherwise I just start to go a little bit mad. So, and now I'm just getting really sick of not seeing my family. And I think that's being amplified by, because up here in Manchester, we're in local lockdown. We have been for, I think for about 2 weeks we were out of it, where we could see, a certain amount of people indoors and outdoors. I just started to go into my mum's house again, and then we went into local lockdown. So for us up here, we can't go to friends' houses or families' houses, or even sit in their gardens now. And now there's talk of the pubs might shut in a few days again, and that the only place we can really see people is like outside in a public place, in a park and in a beer garden. And now it's becoming wintry, and that's not so easy. And because I think I love this time of year, and I love Christmas, and I love the coziness of getting together with friends and family in houses. And last night I was looking at old pictures from this time last year, and it was just making me really sad. I was like, oh, I want to do a Halloween get together. I want to do Christmas. So yeah, I'm just sick of it now, like everyone else is, I think. But also a lot of it has taught me some important lessons.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Thanks for sharing that. I think I don't know about you, but I've had this weird thing. Like if I watch people shaking hands on TV, I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? It's like it's so ingrained suddenly, this like new way of being. It's so strange.
Me too. Or like someone puts a picture on social media and it's a throwback, and they've got their arms around someone. I'm like, oh God, what are you doing? Get away from them. We're really going to have to learn the other way around, our social skills back again, aren't we? I think, because it's amazing how quickly you adapt, and we have adapted to think that social contact is a bad thing.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, can you share a little bit about what you do and how you got to where you are today as well, for people who maybe don't know that much about you?
Yeah, of course. So I always wanted to work in TV and radio, be a journalist, really, sort of do the news. So I did an English degree, and then I did a qualification in journalism, an NCTJ qualification. And I'd done some sort of bits of work for local papers and local radio, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. Um, I just wanted to work for the BBC. Obviously, I think everyone who wants to work in the media, that's seen as, you know, the epitome of success if you can get a job with the BBC. So I was applying for everything and anything, and I ended up getting a job as a PA, as a secretary, basically, to the two bosses at children's TV. So the boss of CBBC and the boss of CBBC. And I worked for them for a couple of years, all the while sort of doing my own community radio show and doing some writing and trying to keep that creativity ticking over. And I really wanted to get a job as a researcher, as a TV researcher, and then work up to being a producer, you know, and sort of go up that ladder. And then randomly, my boss one day asked me to go and audition to be a CBBC presenter. I just got a job as a researcher, actually, and she so randomly asked me this because I'd never expressed a desire to be a presenter ever to anyone. It had never even crossed my mind. I'd done radio presenting on sort of local and community radio, but when I was doing that, I was doing it for the experience of the newsroom. You know what I mean? And doing it for the experience of putting the show together. I never actually wanted to present. But anyway, I went for this audition and they gave me the job. I think I was just cheap and available to start on Monday. So I got the gig and then did that for 6 years. And that just changed my life, you know, in good ways and bad ways. It was a real baptism of fire being thrown onto TV when you'd never even considered what that might mean and what that might come with and what that might do to your mental health. But it also has led to just some incredible opportunities, you know, and through that I got involved with a lot of mental health charities because I'd suffer with my own mental health, and also just because I was working with children and young people every day, and I really developed an interest in early intervention because I realised that, you know, my anxiety had started really, really early on in my life. So I started getting involved with some children's mental health charities, and through that started doing the Radio 1 show, The Surgery, which is obviously a mental health show. And then that became Life Hacks, which is the show I do now. And so, yeah, that's, and so for the past few years, I've kind of been a broadcaster, I suppose, in that realm of mental health. Most of what I've done has been mental health related. I've done a book for kids. You can see the big vain picture of me on the wall behind me advertising the book. So yeah, I'm sort of working in that world now. And everything kind of came full circle because I always sort of had an interest in that sort of thing, I suppose. So it's nice that those two passions align now.
Yeah, I love that story. And yeah, you seem so natural at it now. And yeah, you wouldn't have thought that you'd kind of not been wanting to do that since you were a child.
I was very unnatural at it when I first started. I can't watch any of the early stuff back because I'm so wooden and terrible. And it's so funny because anyone could be a presenter if you've got confidence. It all comes from that. And it was only when I felt like I had the confidence to do it. It's all about being yourself, isn't it? You know, the best presenters are just completely themselves on air, and that's why they're good to listen to and good to watch. And in the early years, I definitely wasn't, because I didn't have the confidence to be myself.
Yeah, sure. Can you share a little bit about your own experience with your own mental health?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think I've always suffered a lot with anxiety. You know, when I was a child, I used to complain to my mum that I couldn't take deep breaths. I used to say, I feel like I can't take a deep breath. And she used to take me for asthma tests and I was fine. And she'd blame it on food colorings and stop me having Smarties, which, you know, it was hard times for me. And yeah, I was always just a worried child, but also just a really deep thinker. I remember sort of being a child and thinking, what is this all about? You know, why do we sort of, is this what life's about? We grow up, we get a job, we have kids, we live for the weekend, you go to work 9 to 5 and then you die. And I remember having these really deep thoughts about life and what the point of it is when I was really young. And I don't know how normal that is, but, you know, I just was a very sort of deep thinker. I was almost an only child in a way because my sister and brother are a lot older than me. They're 18 years older than me. So they'd already sort of grown up and left home and when I was born, and they then started having kids who are now closer to me in age, you know. So it's an amazing family dynamic that we've got, and we've got a brilliant family because of it, a really brilliant big family. But I think I maybe growing up, because I maybe sat around thinking a lot and being creative, and I think that was good for me, and it's probably why I do what I do now, because I would sit writing stories and reading books. But I certainly was quite a deep thinker, I think, looking back. And then it was only sort of when I was about 17 that I was in my first job, and I would have these panic attacks. I was doing a data entry job, so I'd have a lot of time to think. and I'd be doing it again, breathing. I can't breathe, you know, this thing's come back. So then I went to the doctors and they said, oh, it's panic attacks that you're having. And all of a sudden I thought, I've had this my whole life. I've had this all through my teenage years. I had it as a child, and only now I'm an adult as someone said it's panic attacks. This is your thoughts that are causing this, you know, this is your mind. And that's why I'm just so interested in the early intervention, because, you know, as a child, and now I meet children, I see those things in them. I see those, you know, nervous habits in them. I think these are there in us from so young, but we don't do anything about it. So yeah, always been very anxious. And then I think I did the worst thing possible for someone who's very anxious and got quite low self-esteem. Getting a job on the telly, it was probably one of the worst things you can possibly do, because all of a sudden I had to look at myself on all these different camera angles, you know, deal with people saying horrible things about me on Twitter, all that kind of stuff that came with it. And it's just a very vulnerable job as well, standing in the middle of a room, talking, being filmed, having to dress up in costumes, sing, dance, you know, with everyone watching you. It was just a very vulnerable job. And I think that my mental health took a real hit while I was doing all that, but I was too busy to realise it. And then I went through a big relationship breakup, a big sort of 8-year relationship that I'd been in since I was 17. And just ended up so depressed after that. I went through a real period of depression that I almost can't remember. And I've read up on this since, and it's apparently a thing that your brain almost is a bit like when you black out when you're drunk. When you're depressed, apparently you don't store memories in the same way, and it's a bit of a blur to you. And it is a bit of a blur to me. I was sort of carrying on with my life. I had a new boyfriend who I'm now getting married to, who is amazing. I was falling in love with him, so I was happy. In some ways I was like having a great time, but then actually I was going home and lying in bed at night and feeling incredibly depressed. I'd like cry before I left the house every day. I'd be looking in the mirror thinking, I can't leave the house, I can't go and meet a friend that whose company I really enjoy, I can't bear it. I would hide in the toilets at work at CBBC and have a little cry, and just wait in there as long as I could, just so no one needed to speak to me, so I could just not have to. I remember it was painful running into people and them saying, hey, how are you? And having to go, yeah, I'm fine, are you? I remember it was painful to say those words, yeah, I'm fine, are you? You know, I hated any interaction, which obviously was impossible with the job I was doing. So yeah, I went through a time I was really depressed. I was living at home. I'd gone back to live at home because I'd been through a big breakup, and my mum every night would come to my room and say, I think you're depressed, I'm worried you're depressed. And I'd go, I'm not, I'm fine, mum, get out, you know. And then one night she came in and said, I think you're depressed. And I said, yeah, I am. And it was the first time I, you know, admitted it and just said, yeah, no, I think you're right, I think I am. And then that was it. You know, I went to the doctors the next day and got prescribed antidepressants. I started having some, actually, no, I didn't. I went for counselling first. I went for a little bit of counselling first, and then I ended up going to the doctor and getting antidepressants when, you know, I really needed it, really needed that extra help, because I was in such a rut. And the antidepressants did work for me, and I know they don't work for everyone, but the way I describe it to people is I was going to counselling, being told all these things, you know, all these really important things about how to change your thought processes, and I was thinking, yeah, I get you, and what you're saying is right, but I can't physically implement it because I'm too down to do any of these things that are good for me. It was like I was underground, in a hole underground, and the antidepressants just picked me up and put me back on ground level, and then I was on ground level with everyone else, and I could start doing these things to improve my life. But I was too far gone, you know. I was just so low that I couldn't face anything. Everything in the world was against me. Everything was a negative. I just felt desperately sad all the time. I remember lying in bed at night thinking, I could never take my own life. I could never do that to my family, and I just couldn't physically do it. But, you know, hopefully something will kill me young. I remember thinking, hopefully something will kill me young. And now, God, I am so paranoid about dying young. I want to live forever, you know. Now I'm like, oh God, I'm so worried about my health all the time. I want to live forever. I don't want to die young. So it's crazy to me that I ever had that thought of hopefully something will put me out of my misery, you know. And the antidepressants took that away, and you know, were potentially a lifesaver there. And I've since then had a lot of counselling. I'm still on the antidepressants, and I've had a lot of counselling, and I'm you know, in a great place, better than I've ever been now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's what a lot of people don't realize about depression, is that it saps your energy and your motivation. And
Yeah,
actually, you might know, oh, going for a walk would probably make you feel better, or eating healthy, or doing these
yeah.
things. But actually, it's almost impossible to muster that energy, and so you can get into this real cycle. So I'm so glad that that worked for you, and thanks for sharing that, because I think there's still a stigma about medication and people are scared of it, but actually
Mm.
it's a tool that can help. So yeah, it's worth a try if you're in that situation.
Definitely. I mean, I made a documentary for Radio 1 about the stigma around antidepressants, and it's something I still feel, I still want to come off them. I've been on them a while now, but every time I've tried to come off them, I've found it hard. I've had a few days where I felt really, really low, and I've been too busy to feel low, and I've thought, right, go back on them and carry on. And but I still feel that stigma, and there's a part of me that sometimes goes, oh, do you know what, if I have to be on these for the rest of my life, so be it. There are people who are on other medication for physical illnesses, and we would never judge them for having to take this tablet every day for the rest of their life for their physical illness. So why don't we link mental illness in the same way? It's the same, it's still a physical illness. And then there's other days when I feel like I shouldn't be on them, and I worry, what if there's something they don't know about them? What if there's something they're doing to me? I worry about one day if I want to have children, if that will come with any risks taking them when I'm pregnant. I worry about that. There was a Sheridan Smith documentary on recently, I don't know if you watched it, called Becoming Mum, and it was about her becoming a mum, basically being pregnant and having a baby when she's someone who's always struggled a lot with her mental health, and she's on medication. And I found that really helpful to watch. So yeah, it's just still definitely a stigma there. There really, really is. And even with people in the mental health profession, I've met so many people who work in mental health who are so anti-depressants, and I think, oh God, no, there's a lot of people here now who wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Totally, yeah.
And for me, my experience was positive. Obviously, there are some side effects that come with it. Obviously, you'd rather do without. Obviously, I'd rather not pay £9 every month for me antidepressants. That adds up. But at the end of the day, they massively improve my life. So I always say to people that if that's what you need to do to be happy, God, I would rather live, even if if they shave 10 years off my life, which there's no evidence to say that they would, I'd rather live till 70 happy than till 80 and miserable like I was.
Definitely, yeah. And is it right that, are you training to be a counsellor now, or you've done that, or what made you choose to do that?
I'm a very, very early stages. I'm only on sort of week 4 of my level 2 diploma in therapeutic counselling. Yeah, so very, very early stages. It'll be years before I'm qualified. But it's something I've thought about for years, to be honest, because I get asked to do a lot of stuff now where the gap between whether I am a presenter or whether I am an expert is a bit blurred. So I've been on This Morning sort of giving advice and the One Show, and I, will go on podcasts and go on things like that. And obviously my book was an advice book. So I kind of have that role as agony aunt quite a lot, but I don't really have the qualifications to back me up. I can only speak from personal experience, of myself and people I've met. So I've wanted for years to have a qualification to back me up there. And also, TV, radio, it's not stable work, and I think always in the back of your mind is what would be your other career, and it's the only other thing. I've sat and thought about this a lot in lockdown, and it's the only other thing I can see myself doing, other than I love TV and radio and the media generally. That excites me, and the only other thing I'm massively passionate about is mental health and helping people with their mental health. So yeah, I think it will help me with my current job. And then, I do perhaps plan to be a counsellor one day.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I loved your book,
Oh,
Dear Katie, Real Advice on Real Life Problems. And I felt quite emotional reading it, thinking about, so basically, I mean, do you want to explain what the book is and what it's about?
Yeah, so it's a collection of letters from real 10 to 16-year-olds. So I went and did a lot of school visits and collected all these problem letters from children, teenagers. And yeah, and it's the responses from me, advice. It's an agony. It's basically an agony aunt page in a magazine, which I loved so much growing up. Agony aunt pages, was obsessed with them. I mean, now it's funny. I look back, I was obsessed with agony aunt pages as a kid and a teenager. I'd go straight to that bit in every magazine, and that I didn't even think at the time that I had an interest in that sort of thing. But obviously now looking back, it's funny. I obviously always did have an interest in life and its problems. So yeah, it's that in a book essentially, and it's advice from me, and also there's advice from a psychotherapist in there and a doctor, Dr. Rada, who I do lots of stuff with, who does the radio show with me.
Yeah. And I felt, as I said, I felt quite emotional reading it, thinking about all the things that young people deal with. And I don't know if every generation says this, but it seems more complicated now for kids, growing up and teenagers. When I was growing up, we had MSN Messenger and MySpace. But now it's like there's all these other complicated things, to do with social media and just the fast pace of life. And so to have that book as something that is really speaking to that, younger people and addressing those problems, I just found really heartwarming and lovely. So
thank you. Bless you. Yeah, I really enjoyed doing it. There was times I was writing that though, and I was sort of close to tears reading some of the letters, and other times I was laughing my head off. Some of them were funny. Someone wrote in and said, "Can you help me get past level 6 on Grand Theft Auto on Xbox?" So we had some funny ones coming as well. It really made me laugh, and so many subtle moments in those letters that just took me back. So there was one girl who wrote in about feeling like she doesn't fit in at school, and she said, when I go into the canteen I feel like everyone's looking at me, and it just took me back to that feeling of feeling like everyone's looking at you in school and you just want the ground to swallow you up, you just want to be invisible. It just took me back to those moments that you forget. And I think you're right. I think these problems always existed. Our parents' parents, a lot of these problems were the same. Ultimately, human beings are made of the same stuff, and we are always going to have issues with friends, with our body image, with boyfriends and girlfriends, with the pressure that's on us to succeed. But the medium is different now, because everything is done differently and played out differently. So I think social media, it's boring that it gets blamed for everything, but it certainly does amplify that pressure that I think is a big thing when you're a teenager and young person. The pressure to be popular, the pressure to be attractive, the pressure to be successful, the pressure to be having boyfriends and girlfriends and be experienced in those kind of things, be experienced in relationships and be experienced and streetwise in the things that you've done. It's just like, it's all this pressure from, you've got different pressures from your parents, your peers, your teachers, and I think now the fact that we play out all that stuff on Instagram and TikTok, etc., just makes it harder, because you come home from school and you're not. I remember that feeling of coming home from school and just feeling so safe. Coming home from school and shutting the front door and sitting on the sofa with a packet of crisps and watching TV and feeling so safe, like no one can get to me here. No bullies can get to you. No one can judge you. It doesn't matter. And now you can't have that, really. You go on your phone and you're not safe from it, because that bully might have sent you a message or tagged you in something, or,
Yeah. And when you were talking now, I was just, flashing in front of my eyes all these kind of memories from school, those kind of little things that stay in your mind. And if we could, get more support at that time when a lot of these issues are kind of taking root, whether it's kind of body issues or feeling rejected because that guy didn't want to go out with you, or having, so many times in my therapy room, I have people tell me about that time when all the girls in their group ganged up on them and didn't speak to them for 5 days, and how actually it can affect you for your whole life. It can really affect you. And actually, getting more support at that age, or can make such a difference, I think.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I've been having some counselling in lockdown over Zoom, which, by the way, I don't know if you found this, Chloe, because I know a lot of therapists and a lot of clients don't like it, but I really enjoyed having the online therapy. And I actually think for a lot of people that might be really work, because when I was at my most depressed, the effort, everything was an effort, and to leave your house, get dressed, put some makeup on, leave your house, get on a bus or get in your car and go to a therapy appointment. It's a big ask, isn't it? And I feel like for a lot of people, if they can do that on the phone or on Skype, it takes away a lot of the barriers.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I do all my sessions online, and it's quite nice because you're in your own space. You can
Yeah.
relax. You're not kind of in someone else's space. Maybe I think clients tell me, well, they tell me they can open up a bit more because they're in their
Yeah,
own
it feels
living
less
room or
clinical,
something.
doesn't it? Yeah. And I
Yeah.
suppose for some people won't have that safe space. I mean, my counsellor was saying that she's had people do sessions in the car because it's the only place they've got some privacy, you know, which is fair enough. But I think if you do have that safe environment at home, it feels much nicer than going into a sort of clinical setting.
Mm.
But yeah, what was the question?
Um,
Sidetracked.
I'll go on to the next thing. The other thing I wanted to ask you.
I'm sidetracked now. That's how my
We've gone
brain
off.
works. My brain's like a scattergraph.
It's great. It's great. Are there other things that you do to take care of your own mental well-being?
Yeah, there are. I'm a big fan of just writing things down. So I'm a big list fan. I sometimes think if, say, I'm panicking about my career, if I sit and I make a list of all the things I'm going to do, I might not have even done any of them. I might never do them. But if I can just get it down in writing, it makes me feel better. And I'll also write things down. I write my feelings down if I'm having a particularly bad day about something, just in my notes in my phone. I mean, if someone found my notes in my phone, it would be like, they'd be like, wow, is this girl okay? Um, but I find that so helpful, just getting it. I always say to people, it's like when you write, if you've ever written a text to someone you're angry at, but not actually sent it, or written an email to someone you're angry at work, but not actually sent it, just getting it down out of your head and onto paper, or, onto your phone or computer or whatever, I find so helpful. And I've kind of over the years, because I've done so much soul searching and thinking about what's important to me, I have lists of things to remind me what to do. So I have a list, for example, of things that make me feel better and a list of things that make me feel worse. And that was inspired by Matt Haig's book. He did that in his book, Reasons to Stay Alive. And I find that helpful to look at and think, right, I'm having a bit of a crap day. So I'll look at those lists, and chances are I won't be doing enough things that are on the better list. I'll be doing things that are on the worst list. And I look at that. So I quite like to refer to sort of notes that I've got written down about mental health to remind myself what's good for me. And those things are, chatting to friends and family. And an important life lesson I think I've learned is that it needs to be the right ones. There's friends in your life who actually can be quite draining, or you come away from speaking to and you feel a bit more stressed, or you've just not been able to be fully yourself with them. So actually you've not felt good. And then there's friends that you spend time with and you come away and it's like you've had a therapy session. You just feel amazing. And same for family. And luckily all my family are like that. I always come away. I never feel better than when I come away from spending time with my close family. So try and remind myself that, I think people are the main component that make your life either amazing or terrible. So it's choosing the right ones, isn't it? And that's been an important life lesson. I mean, I say exercise. I've been so busy the past 2 weeks that has gone completely, but certainly that always makes me feel better. Exercise is mad because it's the only thing in your life that you never want to do. Like, I never want to do it and I dread it, but I never regret it. Like everyone says, you never regret it. I always feel great afterwards. So why has my brain not cottoned on to it before and looked forward to it? It's weird, isn't it? But it never does. Like my brain's like, no, that's the last thing I want to do, even though I always feel good after. So that's a big one. Reading, being in the sunshine, which has kind of gone away now, being outside, all the kind of classics, all that sort of thing. Comfort TV, watching Friends, or I watched Legally Blonde the other night and I cannot tell you what a good mood that put me in. What a feel-good film that is. I just was buzzing after watching that. Sitting with a blanket on me, lighting candles, just, the classics, but more than anything, for me, it's having a list of those things. I like to have it written down and I refer to it. And if I'm feeling a bit messy in my head, I go, right, look at that list and do some stuff off there, because you've obviously drifted away from what's good for you.
Yeah, I love those ideas. I love making lists and referring back to things, because when you're feeling rubbish or anxious or low, you don't always remember the things that make you feel good, or you don't remember those more positive things. And so just having somewhere to refer back to them, I love that. I went to see Legally Blonde in the theatre. I think it was Sheridan Smith who
Oh,
was in it,
yes,
actually.
she did do it, yeah.
It was brilliant. I need to
Oh,
rewatch
I
the
haven't
movie or
seen it at the
something.
theatre, but I bet she was absolutely brilliant at that.
Yeah.
Oh, such a feel good film. Just one of those great like 90s teen films where all the bad people get the comeuppance and all the good ones get ahead, and there's a big song at the end, and you're just like, woohoo! It put me in a better mood than I expected watching that.
Yeah. We need more of that at this time, I think.
Yeah, we do.
So you touched on this earlier about confidence and the confidence to, get up and speak to a lot of people on radio, on TV. I know that probably a lot of people listening are thinking, that's like my worst nightmare, So I don't know if you have any advice about that, about, you mentioned kind of being yourself. And sometimes it can seem as though that's like the hardest thing to do for some of us sometimes. So I don't know if you have any kind of advice or tips about that.
Yeah, people automatically stop being themselves. You put
a microphone.
Yeah. You put a microphone in front of someone or a camera in front of someone, and all of a sudden they're like, oh God, and they put on the phone voice and they start acting, And it took me a long time to not do that as well. And it really only came from, with everything, it just came from the self-belief and feeling like I can do this. And now whenever I go into something I'm nervous about it, I tell myself, you are good enough to do this. Someone's paid you to come along and stand on this stage and talk to these people, and they've chosen you for a reason. You are good enough to do it. And then I find that I just can. Confidence is the one thing, I think, where you've got to almost lie to yourself a bit. If you don't believe it, you've got to fake it till you make it, haven't you? And it's amazing how once you then do that, it does start working. And the whole thing of imagining everyone's naked, I don't imagine everyone's naked, but I imagine everyone else there is as nervous as I am, which is the case always. So if I'm going to go on stage and interview a panel of people, likelihood is they'll be more nervous than I am because they've maybe done it less, or likelihood is everyone in the audience is thinking, God, I couldn't do that job in a million. I couldn't stand on that stage in front of all those people. So actually they'll be quite forgiving of you. So I just try and remember those things. First of all, you have got this, you can do this. And second of all these people here are they would be as nervous and as uncomfortable with it as you are. And I think honesty is so important as well. Like if I am nervous about something, I'll just say it. Or if I make a mistake, I'll just go, oh, well, I made a right mess of that, didn't I? Because then no one can catch you out. No one can say, oh, you were a bit rubbish there, because you've said it yourself. Yeah. So I think people appreciate that honesty as well. And people think, oh God, yeah, if I was on the radio, I'd be pressing the wrong buttons as well. We're all human. So I just try and be honest about it. I'm not standing up there acting like I'm Beyonce and I'm better than everyone else because I'm on the telly or the radio. I'm just sort of honest about it. And I think that's the best way of dealing with those nerves. Because I think that the thing that makes you nervous is you think everyone's expecting something of you. Yeah. And what's the worst case scenario? People aren't going to pelt fruit at you like in the old Shakespearean days. What's going to happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? You mess it up, you go, well, I've made a right mess of that. Let me start again. And it'll all be fine,
I love that idea of just being honest. I think if we feel like we have to put on a front or put on a mask, that's incredibly draining and it's going to make you feel tense. But actually, if you're just being open and honest, then it takes that pressure off.
Yeah, I think CBBC really helped me with that, actually, in the way that was a baptism of fire. But, I went straight into doing live TV every day for 6 years. And it was very, we read a script a couple of times and then we just do it. And it was very sort of natural. That's how they wanted it to be. And so many things went wrong. And there were so many mistakes and we just laughed it off, and we were allowed to, because that was the nature of what we were doing. They wanted things to go wrong. Because it was funnier that way. And I think that just taught me that there's nothing that can't be saved by laughing it off. I mean, I fear for newsreaders. I wonder how they deal with it, because you can't just laugh halfway through a news report. That's the difference. Depending on what you're talking about, you can't just laugh it off. You have to pick up and carry on. But luckily, most of the stuff I've done, I can laugh it off, and there's nothing that can't be helped by that. Because I think people hear you laughing at your mistake and they like you more for it. I do when I hear that happen on the radio or when I watch that happen on TV. Phil and Holly, everyone loves them because they start cracking up, don't they, and laughing and messing things up, and everyone would much rather watch that than people be pristine.
Good. I like this. I like this message. Yes, it's okay to mess up. It's okay. It could actually make you
Exactly.
more endearing.
I think so.
And I remember reading, I think it was in Susan Cain's book, I think it's called Quiet. It's about
Oh,
introverts. And
nice.
she
Yeah.
cited a study that 50% of people say that they are shy. So yeah, what you're saying about other people being nervous, it's like, yeah,
Mm.
probably other people are. Most people can't get up on, or don't think they could get up on stage and speak, and that sort of thing. So yeah, good thing to remember,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. I think I've been lucky as well that I've always had quite nice audiences. You know, most of the stuff I've done has been for children and parents of children who've always just been so lovely, and mental health related stuff where, again, people are so, so lovely. So I've had good audiences. I think for presenters who are, you know, bigger presenters than me, the Hollies, the Phils, the Ant and Decks, the, you know, mind you, Ant and Deck could probably murder someone. Everyone would be like, we love you. I don't think they can do any wrong, can they? They're such heroes. But I think when you're that kind of celebrity and presenter, you probably do get a lot harsher feedback and you know an audience that might not be as forgiving. But I'm lucky that it's a generally quite nice audience. And same on Radio 1. I mean, sometimes Radio 1 listeners will tell you. I mean, you make a mistake. If you say something that's factually wrong, they will tell you about it. But I think our audience on Life Hacks, again, is a nice audience. Because I think if you're a bigot, you'd turn off if you heard our show.
Yeah, sure,
Because
sure.
of what we're talking about, you know. So I think we attract a nice audience. So
That's good.
I think I've been lucky as well that I haven't come across any meanies.
Good, 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 good. I'm just mindful of the time. I think you have to go. I could talk to you for like another 20
Oh,
hours, but
I know, so I
we'll
know.
wrap it up. Can you just share a bit about anything else that you're up to at the moment and where people can find out more about you and get your book and that sort of thing?
Of course, yes. Yeah. So every Sunday I'm on Radio 1 from 4 till 7 and we do Life Hacks, and it's a show all about life. So we chat about mental health and whatever's going on in the world of young people specifically. And then we do the chart as well, the chart update from 6 till 7. So I have to put a different hat on for that. And yeah, I'm writing a column for Psychology's magazine at the moment as well, so that you can get that on the Psychology's magazine website. So I'm doing that every month, and it's about lessons that you learn in your 20s. Now that I'm 31, it's about all the important life lessons of your 20s. So yeah,
Brilliant.
that's where you can find me. And yeah, the book, obviously, usual places, Amazon, Waterstones, and it's for teenagers, 10 to 16-year-olds.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for speaking to me.
Oh, Chloe, this has been so lovely. And I feel like I want to know so much about you because you're such an interesting person and I'm so interested in what you do. And we're solving about me.
That's so nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.